Welcome back to another edition of the MLB Inside the Diamond podcast. I'm your host, Tom Johnston. I'm joined by the one and only LaMarr Fields. How you doing, bro?
Pretty good. Can't complain.
So, as we could tell, the World Series is now over. Baseball season is now over. The Astros win it, and overall, Lamar, I want your thoughts on last night's game, but more importantly, I want your thoughts on the overall series. How did you feel it went down and stuff like that?
No, and this one had,
Yeah,
I believe,
it's a pretty good 6 game series. I mean, 5 games, but
we should go look at
6 game series. Yeah,
down.
Phillies had a chance, but they couldn't. After winning game 3, they couldn't get game 4 or game 5, and Astros went home and took care of business. Alvarez with that monster shot. A good win. Uh, Happy for Dusty Baker. She was a game concluded last night. I got a article up about Dusty Baker winning his first World Series on EverydayFan.com. 25 years of manager, one of the best managers out there, over 2,000 wins, 9 division titles, 3 pennants. Finally get a World Series, so I know he's feeling good.
And on top of that, with Dusty, as much as you say all that, I think that goes to show, how hard success, especially in the World Series, can come because you just mentioned his entire managerial career and what he's been able to do. But the one thing he really hasn't done is, win it all. And I think, him coming back for another year, I think after this, he's basically done and going to retire because he's really achieved everything that he really could achieve as a manager. But it also puts into perspective, Justin Verlander, he got his first World Series win too. And, I think and allow me to come out from this perspective. I think the momentum switched to the Astros when that no hitter occurred, and then they won the next subsequent game because then it was like, okay, we were able to do this in Philly. We got them right where we need them, and the series is shifting back to Houston. We have evidently got home field back on our side, and I think it was just a testament. I like how Philly was able to take a game, in Houston and how they both just battled. But I think what it really came down to was, like you said, Jordan Alvarez, really coming up clutch. And I think that overall the Astros didn't let the moment get to them. At the end of the day, they allowed for them to play their game. Altuve really didn't do much as he probably should have. But Altuve in a long stretch, played to his best performance. But I do want to get to one specific play that happened in Philadelphia because, after all, that could have been a big series and momentum shifter. It was where the Astros outfielder, the center fielder, he went and he leaped against the wall and he caught that baseball. And I think that if you take that away, or if he doesn't catch it, realistically, momentum could be back in the Phillies' hands, or this series could still be going. And I think it was a great series for baseball. As much as people don't really like the Astros because of that scandal that had occurred and whatnot and stuff, but people were joyous that a team like the Phillies were able to really come from behind. Where at one point with 2 weeks left in the season, they weren't even really looking at a playoff picture and to go on a run that they did and then end up where they were. I think it goes to show a lot about, the testaments. Baseball's best moments and the best part of baseball doesn't really happen in the regular season. It happens towards the end, towards the postseason, because that stuff matters. Hey, we might not be in a playoff picture right now, but it doesn't mean we can't go on a 5 game losing streak and see what happens. To think about it, the Cardinals, the Braves, and the Dodgers, all teams with, say, well, two of the teams especially had over 100 wins, but to even think about the Yankees, for that matter, getting ousted in the ALCS, or whatever you might know, the ALDS or so. I think it goes to show a lot. It goes to show that, hey, you can have all of these wins and have all these players, but what it really comes down to is how hard are you going to play on the field? I think it was kind of a bad look overall in the playoffs because for the Yankees to end up how they were, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, yeah, they're going all the way. But what are your thoughts on that in regards to, the teams that got eliminated early but realistically had a better record than, say, some of the teams that were really went far?
Well, the teams that got eliminated early to me that's surprising is the Dodgers and probably the Mets. I mean, the Yankees lost to the Astros. The Astros were a good team.
Yeah.
And so they won 100 games too, so that's not surprising to me. And they Astros pretty much own the Yankees this year, so I'm not surprised. The only ones I'm surprised about is pretty much the Dodgers or the Mets. You get further down the line, and they should have.
We know how baseball headlines can dominate in New York, and I really think, both New York teams are going to take a reflection on this and just say, you know what, we got to do better. Because I know Aaron Boone's coming back as the manager for the Yankees. Not a lot of people are happy about it, and I know that overall, when the Yankees were on that big 17, 18-game losing streak that they had earlier in the year, everyone was saying Aaron Boone needs to go. And then all of a sudden, they get off of that losing streak. They somewhat get hot again. And ironically, I think their record was 162. So it's like they literally win 100 games, lose 62. But I think it goes to show that, even if you call for someone to get fired, it's kind of crazy how detrimental that can actually be to a team because, you're taking away the guy that, is relatively in charge, that relatively knows the players. They know what they need to do to win and, stuff like that. But, some Yankee fans probably are not happy that Boone's returning. But, I think from a baseball perspective, you really have to ask yourself this is, who can actually fit that New York lifestyle? Because, man, let's be realistic, okay? Even managing the Mets and having the Mets have a good year this year, it's really hard to manage in New York because both fan bases are, down your tails. They expect you to win. I know from a Yankees standpoint, the Yankees get a lot of media coverage and like you're expected to win there. And, it's like you got to ask yourself, how many people are willing to take on that kind of workload to where it's going to be demanded that you're very good and that, you're in one of the biggest baseball markets ever. Like they already know the owners are going to invest in the team. It's a matter of how you micromanage the team and stuff like that. But, overall, I think that this was a great World Series. Ironically, I still think that the stereotype or however you want to put it is true about the Dodgers. They really cannot win in a full season because the only time they ever really won a World Series was whenever it was a shortened, like 62-game season per se, and then they won it then. But they still have yet to prove that they can really advance on. And the crazy part about it is we could get into this topic in the future podcast, but it's been rumored that, Turner for the Dodgers might want to actually go back to the East Coast. And it's also apparent that Clayton Kershaw is a free agent along with some of their other, top tier talent. Could this be an offseason where we might see some of these Dodgers not return to baseball next year, at least for the Dodgers? Not saying they'll retire, but it's more so they won't be playing for the Dodgers.
It don't even really matter because they just find somebody else to fill their holes and spend money. And that's what the Dodgers gonna do. And so they figure out how to win the World Series again. That's what they're gonna do. Like Justin Turner, as he lost, but look at their lineup. You got Mookie Betts, Freeman, Bellinger, and whoever else they're gonna try to sign in the offseason. I mean, Kershaw, he's about done. He still give you 10 to 15 wins, but as far as big game pitching in the playoffs, I think it's over for him with that much.
Oh, yeah. It's just I know Clayton Kershaw's getting up there in age. I think the last time I looked, he was like 35 or something like that. It's just he doesn't have the stuff that he once used to have. And I know that, like, back problems are starting to get to him. He's, been on the injured reserve list or whatever MLB likes to call it these days, not the disabled list anymore. But, it's just you need starters that are going to be able to get you the job done consistently, not just, it's great that Clayton Kershaw could get you 10 to 15 wins this season. That's great. But would you rather take a guy that can get you 10 to 15, or would you rather take a guy that could get you, say, 16 to 20 wins, but being able to pitch consistently to do that? There's a big difference. And, stuff like that. But I do want to actually ask you about this because there have been a lot of people that have said that this might be a possibility. Aaron Judge going to the Dodgers. It's ramped up that the Dodgers are willing to offer him a big deal, something the Yankees might not be willing to offer him. But it's just whenever you look at it, though, whenever you look at payrolls within the past 5 years, the Yankees and the Dodgers have always been up there neck and neck with everything. Why do you think the Dodgers might offer him? But more importantly, why do you think the Yankees may, not saying that they will, but they may just say, you know what, we're not going to be willing to give you that contract?
It's gonna be interesting, man. The Yankees got, besides Judge, they got a lot of other holes to fill too. Shortstop, left field. It'll be interesting to see what goes on. The good thing about it is you'll find out right away because the free agency start on November 10th. One thing I like about baseball, as soon as the season over, free agency in the next few days, it ain't 3 months away. It's like right there, right, it gets rolling right away. So you'll be seeing there's a lot of good free agents out there. So this is gonna be an interesting free agency period.
Indeed it is. And that's one of the things that I look forward to about baseball because, I don't know about all the other sports, but I know in baseball, free agency makes a big splash on the first day because you got teams
Not really.
That's true. That's true.
The last couple of years, nobody was signing at all.
Until towards the start of the season, it's just we waited all this.
I think this season could be a little different though with all the big names out there.
Oh, of course, because you're going to have teams that are going to be vying for these guys. Like I know Aaron Judge is going to be a sought after guy, and you're going to see a lot of teams, at least the teams that could afford it and want to spend. They're going to say, you know what, I got all these other positions filled. I need this guy and stuff. And it's going to be an interesting take to say the least. I know last year with the Freddie Freeman sweepstakes, it was a one-of-a-kind ordeal. Now it's going to be the Aaron Judge sweepstakes. And you know what? If Judge stays a Yankee, that's great. If he doesn't, it's really not the end of the world. But, I do know this, because I've been talking to some of my Philadelphia friends that are from the Philly area, and they're very depressed about the Astros winning it. And here's what I tell them is this. Listen, I'm not saying the Astros wanted it more. It's just they were just probably in a position of where they were able to do what needed to get done to win it. You got to understand, this team has had far more success in the playoffs than the Phillies have had in recent years. And, sometimes in a World Series, it comes down to experience, who's going to be big in this moment. And Yordan Alvarez has shown that he is pretty big in the moment. And, of course, being in Houston probably helped the cause. But, overall, I would say that this baseball season in particular was probably one to remember just because there were certain teams that you didn't think were going to make a run that did. And, that's what makes baseball baseball. I think if we could break this down in future podcasts about the division standings and how everything played out. But I think overall, whenever you look at how everything transpired this year, I think the AL East was probably the toughest because you had every team but one have 80-plus wins. And I think that goes to show that, hey, a lot of games were tight. A lot of teams knew that, hey, we got to win this. That way it makes this race a lot tougher. And I think some teams are, might take a step back and reevaluating some things in a new season. But, before you know it, spring training is going to be here because it's already November. You got December, January before pitchers and catchers report in February down to Florida and Arizona. So it's going to be a crazy ride these next 2.5 months, but it's going to be a ride that's worth everything. It's just a matter of what teams are going to make a splash, what teams aren't. I can say for the record, I know the Pirates won't probably do a lot. That's just a mere fact and evidence. haven't really showed that they're willing to do a lot. But besides that, I think that the Phillies are going to be king for next year. They know what it takes, but it's also going to set a target on the attack because, okay, this team's been to the World Series. So, we got to ramp up to face them so that we can potentially beat them in a lot of ways. That way, they might not get back to it. But, I think it goes to show a lot, especially with Bryce Harper. I know that a lot of people are saying that Hoskins should leave and stuff. I say that's up to the ownership. If they like him, then they're going to keep him. If not, they're going to find a way to get rid of him. But it really just depends. It's going to be – I'll be honest with you right now. If I'm interested in I'm very interested in free agency. But if I'm interested to see what three teams make the biggest splash, it would be the Dodgers, the Yankees, and – probably the Phillies, just to see what they're going to do, how they're going to do it and stuff, because it always gets interesting whenever you have some of these big name guys and what they've done for the team in the past, but what, ownership and front office are, willing to do in general. But congrats to the Astros. They showed that they probably were the better team, but it was great to see, a different team from the NL. Most people would probably say the same for the AL, but hey, the Astros just proved that they could run away with the division early and stuff. But who knows what's going to happen in the future? I just know it's going to be exciting, and I know that in the future, there's a possibility that if the Angels get sold, Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani will not be a part of the Angels organization in the future. So that's a big if, though, if the sale goes through. I've been reading reports saying that if that were to happen, that Ohtani and Trout would not be a part of it. But, what are some of your lasting impressions about this season overall, and, what team surprised you in the playoffs?
Philly surprised me. I didn't see them going to the World Series. They got there, but they're gonna have to build on to it because the Mets ain't going nowhere and the Braves ain't going nowhere. So they're gonna have to do what they need to do, expand that roster, uh, get some more star pitching, and get some more. I mean, they got some pretty good hitters, but what hurt the Astros and what hurt the Phillies in this series, they couldn't hit. They couldn't do. They really couldn't hit the Astros bullpen. Montero and Presley would just Presley owned them with that curveball. They couldn't hit it.
That's a good point. Sometimes it's starting pitchers are one thing, but then it's like, oh, once you get to the bullpen, it was actually kind of funny because I read a report how, not sure how accurate this is, how the Astros were trying to get Philly cheesesteaks catered to their hotel, and the one owner of this one store just said no, and I'm just like, dang, that's bold. Like Philly cheesesteak, that's like iconic, and you're gonna sit there and deny them no, like. That could go either way, but hey, I mean, but you do make a good point. Some bullpens are really loaded, and some bullpens can shut people out. I mean, it's getting to the point to where some teams are starting to build their bullpens to where they can be lights out, to where their starter only has to go 5 or 6 innings, still get that quality start in, but you can turn it over to the bullpen and have no issue because a couple of years back, it was like I need my starter to go 7 or 8 innings just to give me a quality start so that I could turn it over to my bullpen in the 8th and 9th. Now it's like, you know what? Let me try to get my bullpen loaded so that I don't really have to worry about my starter going too much into it. But yeah, I would definitely say the Phillies surprised me in a lot of ways, but that's the beauty of baseball. You never know who's going to do it. The people you think are won't. And we've seen that. Nobody's seen the Phillies coming. But everyone thought, hey, it's going to either be the Dodgers, the Braves, or whomever, even the Yankees. And that didn't even happen. And that's one of the reasons why I really like baseball. The unpredictable can happen when you least expect it and, stuff like that. But any lasting thoughts on that before we move into college football?
No, I'm good.
Well, here's what I would say. College football this week, it never amazed me. Well, I should say it did amaze me. You have Alabama go down for their second loss, and I just read that it hasn't happened for the first time since like 2019 or whatever. Kudos to LSU. because that's a big win because that really shifts the playoff picture a lot. But,
Yeah.
it also – this is what I really want to get into in the first topic of this part is the SEC because Tennessee loses rather to Georgia, but Tennessee beats Alabama. But then you don't have Alabama and Georgia facing one another, and Alabama already has 2 losses. To me, I really didn't see Tennessee play like they were the number one team in the league, and it was expected that Georgia was going to beat them. But how does it look now with the playoff picture? Because there's only relatively 3 games left in the season, and, a lot of people see Michigan and Ohio State in that playoff picture too. Clemson's now out of it. But here's the crazy part about it is Michigan and Ohio State face each other the last game of the season. One of those 2 teams is going to have 1 loss, and it's really going to shake things up. TCU somehow finds their way into the playoff picture now, or at least they're about closer to it. How would you describe college football season this far? And do you see any more crazy things going on? I know I could see crazier things going on in college football.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy down the stretch. I'm anxious to see what the top four are gonna look like. Yes, I want to see how far Tennessee drop and see how far Alabama drop and Clemson as well. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting right now. Yeah, that Michigan Ohio State game is gonna be crucial, depending
It's
on where
definitely
those
going to
teams
be
are ranked.
crucial, especially if those teams are ranked. And this is the scary part. Both those teams are probably going to be ranked in the top 4 whenever they face each other. And everyone thought last year's game was big. I think it's going to make this year's game even bigger. And the fact that it's at Ohio State. So it's like,
Yeah,
I think that if there's one thing Jim Harbaugh's got to prove, last year wasn't a fluke. We're still that talented. And the thing is I think whenever you look at it, what makes Michigan so lethal is they have 2 really great running backs. Like, they're not good, they're great. Like, Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards have shown that, like, they can really take it to an opposing defense, and they really don't have to, like, and what makes it even more lethal is whenever you have a quarterback as good as J.J. McCarthy has shown he can be and hasn't lost the game since he's relatively started or taken over starting duties, I think that makes Michigan more lethal. I mean, I think that this is a great lead up to the game for 3 reasons. For one, Penn State and Ohio State. I will say this right now. Penn State did Michigan a favor in a big way. They truly exposed the Ohio State defense for what it is in the the small things that Ohio State hasn't cleaned up yet. And I think that goes to show you, like, hey, like, Ohio State is, like, not as really that good on defense as people think they are because there were loopholes and there were holes that were shown against Penn State. And, I think what really hurts Ohio State is that was their first true test, but that was so far into the regular season. And their only other true test is going to be against Michigan, but that's the last game of the season. And I don't think that, whenever you look at it from the college football playoff perspective in the committee, they're going to weigh when the losses happen and how they happen.
yeah,
Because I still attest to this day that if Clifford doesn't throw 3 interceptions, Penn State might as well actually come away with that victory. And you're talking about a whole different ball game because, even then, Michigan would have the tiebreaker against Penn State. But even then, it's just like that adds a whole nother element to it and stuff. But, what are your thoughts basically on how Ohio State has performed? The fact since they've played against Penn State and moving on out, what do they really have to bring it against Michigan for to actually, like, prove, like, okay, last year's loss to Michigan was a fluke. We really can't afford that to happen again. But coming from Michigan's perspective, it's like, they, like, yeah, last year wasn't a fluke. Like, we can take on Ohio State.
yeah. Pretty much how I have to win the game. I mean, they looked horrible yesterday against Northwestern. Northwestern could have very well won that game. They ain't got the talent. They couldn't. Sometimes you got to have some talent in your team to put you over the hump. They couldn't. They have enough talent, but they put up a fight. which I think Ohio State came in number 2 in the playoff rankings.
Mm-hmm.
I think Georgia should jump up to 1, and they should stay with Ohio State man at 2, just off the performance they did yesterday. I don't think Ohio State deserved to be number 1, but
No.
we'll see. We'll see what they come up with. Was it they announced that on Tuesday? Playoff rankings.
Yeah, they announced it on Tuesday.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what the top 4 will be look like.
If you could actually think of giving a top 4, who would you say it would be and why?
I have Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Michigan 3, and I have Tennessee 4. I mean, you asking a lot for a team in a first year of actually being a good team to beat Georgia and Alabama the same season. Granted, they didn't play all that great yesterday, but still, I believe them at 4 just because Alabama was undefeated at the time. So that would be my 4. I mean, I know people are gonna say TCU, but I mean, I've seen teams like TCU and these other teams in the playoff 4 and 56-7 blowout in the game, in the playoff game.
No,
I want to see
where
they got. I want to see where they got Oregon at too. So I want to see where TCU and Oregon at. They might put TCU 4. Who knows? We'll see what. Strength of schedule gonna come up to bite TCU in the butt at the end.
I would totally agree. If I had to choose a top 4 right now, it would definitely be Georgia, Ohio State, pretty much like you said, Michigan, and then Tennessee. Because I say Tennessee should still be ranked number 4 because, okay, yeah, you beat Alabama, but you were expected to lose to Georgia. But it's also like you even say, okay, in Tennessee's first year of actually being a legit good team, you can't really – like that would honestly be like, okay, everybody's saying how loaded Penn State could be in the future, and then you expect, Penn State to beat Michigan and Ohio State in the same year, even though it could be possible. It just that would be hard to ask for because, okay, well, we might beat one or the other, but there's a slim chance to beat both. But I really don't think like the loss was really that bad to where you say, okay, this team's not a top 4 team in the country. I honestly would say, if you would look at some team in the top 4 and say they might deserve to move down but not out of the top 4, it might be Ohio State because I'm really not convinced Ohio State – like Ohio State's a top 4 team, but they've kind of shown that, hey, top 4 teams, they really don't look that bad in certain games whenever they probably should be doing this or doing that, and they have. And I think that really should – weigh a lot on future just because it's like this, okay? We're starting to see everything get exposed. And, maybe it's crazy how everything's getting exposed. Maybe it's like, okay, who knows? Michigan might be the better team than Ohio State. That's why the games are played. But I really think whenever you look at how Ohio State's defense has shown that they are, Michigan might be able to run all over that. Who's to say? I do know this based off the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry. As much as Jim Harbaugh and Ryan Day want to say, I do focus on the opponent that I am playing. There is no doubt that they also look at that other team and they're just like, I am preparing for them every single week, no matter who I'm actually facing, because that game truly matters. And that game often leads to a college football playoff berth, or maybe even a Rose Bowl berth, or the Big Ten championship game for sure. But I think it goes to show that overall, they are seeing what everyone else is doing and they are game planning. And I almost bet you that Jim Harbaugh is willing to run the ball down Ohio State's throat until they can prove that they could stop the run. That's what Harbaugh really does. And what makes him even more lethal this year is, he has J.J. McCarthy, that he might get his first taste of Michigan, Ohio State, but this guy's already been in pressure-packed environments, but he's also shown, he's really not fazed of the big moment. Now, granted, that's a different stage, Michigan, Ohio State, but it sure goes to show that, hey, I can actually live up to the hype of this and stuff. I mean, it's really a tail of the tape. But I mean, overall, that shocked me. Alabama having two losses shocks me. But I also see that, hey, it proves that Alabama's beatable. It might prove that, hey, for the short term, Alabama might have a down year, but it's hard to say. But, two losses to Alabama is truly a down year considering they're always used to being in a top spot. But it's also like I've started to see how Nick Saban has started to say in some of his press conferences and everything, how, hey, you being that top guy and having a team that's coming off of two losses or so, that makes them dangerous because they got pride, they got goals that they want to achieve, and yet they're coming to us. They're facing us, a team that's in the top four per se. That's speaking if Bama was in the top four and facing a team that had two losses. But I honestly think that it makes Alabama a dangerous team now because, Alabama's got two losses and now they got to go to Ole Miss. And, it's going to be a crazy game, but it's going to be a game Alabama needs to win to actually still like get a quality New Year's Six bowl because they're still in contention for a good bowl and stuff. But, does the LSU loss hurt? Sure. Was it on the road? Sure. Was it in overtime? Absolutely. But that's the beauty of college football, though, because like now you get these more complex situations, and it's really about okay, how does this and this shape itself out? But I would totally agree. That's my top four just because of how everything's played out. But it does stink, and I think maybe schedule makers might say, hey, maybe we see how this season shapes out to see who the West would draw from the East and vice versa, and stuff like that. But, there's a game in the Big Ten that I would like to talk about, and it's Michigan State and Illinois. It's been quite some time since the Spartans took a trip at Illinois. And to come away with the victory that they did, especially with what transpired the previous week, was kind of scary. But, it goes to show, Mel Tucker was really focused. He had to get his team. He had to get everybody on the football program, geared up to face this Illinois team that was ranked 16th in the nation or so, and or a little bit higher. I think it was like 14th or something like that. But, it's the fact that Illinois even surprised me with how good that they've been. But you also, whenever you look at the West Division in the Big Ten, there's really not much volume to speak. I mean, yeah, Purdue's good. Minnesota is, good. But, I think whenever you look at the rest of what's happened in the Big Ten West, Iowa hasn't been up to par. Nebraska's just they are in their own like crap hole right now, to be fair and to keep it PG, because letting go of Scott Frost, having to guarantee him all that money and stuff, but that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But I think whenever you look at what's definitely happened, it just goes to show, hey, right now we're just playing to like become bowl eligible. We're playing to just, do what we need to do. And it's going to be crazy. But I really feel like, these last 3 weeks are going to really project a lot. Penn State and Maryland are going to kick off at 3:30 this week. I know Ole Miss and Alabama are kicking off at 3:30. So, but even then, another thing that shocks me is Clemson, Notre Dame. Notre Dame beating them, and not just beating them, but like they beat Clemson and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on that game? And, how do you think things look in the ACC with, how Clemson lost, but also how Syracuse surprisingly lost to Pitt?
Yeah, Clemson and Syracuse were never high on my radar this year. I always felt Clemson was ranked too high, and you see why Notre Dame and Syracuse. I was watching the game last week when the Notre Dame beat them, and I was like, it's the Syracuse team, man. They didn't impress us at all. You got a big home game against Story College, and you come out and pretty much lay an egg. That's bad. But happy for Notre Dame coach Freeman. Everybody lost a couple games this season, and they all want to get in too far over his head. Man, it's his first year of coach. Let the man coach the team for the whole season. Now he's turned it around. They're playing much better football.
I like to look at it as this, a head coach in his first season, yes. Was he a coordinator and stuff? Yes. But being a coordinator compared to being a head coach is different. You're going to have fumbles in your first season as a head coach. Does a loss against Marshall look bad? Yeah, absolutely it does. But I think whenever you look at how he's rebounded and stuff, now it's like, hey, Notre Dame is still Notre Dame football. It always has been. It always will be. But I think whenever you look at it from this perspective, is he's at least turning things around. He's learning a lot more as each game goes on. He's going to learn how to develop a recruiting class and stuff like that. Not that he already doesn't like really have that experience, but have it as a coordinator per se, or actually a recruiting coordinator versus being the head coach doing it, are two different things. You know, a lot of people, they just, to me, it's like in every sport. When a new coach comes in, oh, you need to get rid of this guy. Like you're not even giving a guy a chance. Like that's even like with, you know, Auburn football. Like, and that's another topic I actually want to talk about, regardless of the games, is, you know, head coaching, you know, firing coaches. You know, we see that Auburn's coach had just recently got let go. Paul Chris got let go by Wisconsin. What do you think is really the ripple effect of letting a coach go, say early in the season or midseason, compared to just saying let them finish it out? Because, you know, letting them go midseason compared to letting them finish the season out, it could honestly be the difference between a bigger buyout. I mean, I actually read that in the past 600 some days or whatever, Auburn has paid $37+ million in two coaching buyouts. And that's not even including what it takes to hire a staff, what it takes to hire another coach. What's the ripple effect of that?
You're wasting money, ripple effect, and dealing with transfers, players that coach recruited and stuff like that. I mean, Auburn to sit down this offseason and really do a full on coaching search and find the right man. Let him coach to get his what's name in there. Because when you hire new coaches in college, you got to at least give them, I think, 4 years so they get their full recruiting classes in there and see what they do. 4 years only if they like trend if they trending up. You know? I mean, you can't be there 4 years. You only win like one game, 2 games a season.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they need to figure out who they want to coach. They need to go after some big. They try to go after some big name.
Yeah, you know, I totally agree. You know, I think you give a coach 4 years if the program's trending upward. I think you might cut them loose on 3 years if it's okay. But
Yeah.
I don't really agree with firing a coach, so on and so forth. And it all depends on the contract that the coach has and everything like that. You know,
No,
I'm a
to me,
big
it depends on if the if the if the coach is if the coach is getting to the player. The coach is coaching. The players are like, oh, and not into it. You gotta let them go.
yeah.
You gotta let them go.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
If the players ain't responding to a coach, then there's no reason to play.
that's true. That is true. You know, I'm a big proponent on that. You know, sometimes it's really about what the coach is actually doing and how they're doing it per se. But you know, overall, you know, I just kind of agree. Maybe you just like let the coach finish it out because of how their contract is structured. You know, some schools might not want to be, but you know, I have heard, you know, the Auburn coaching job is really one of the tougher jobs in the SEC because you'll want to beat Alabama, but like you really want to be that good, but also they must have some really great boosters that got a lot of money to be paying out those kinds of buyouts because
Uh,
yeah, Chief, that ain't
well,
happening over here.
uh, sell out every game. These colleges got money. And money ain't a problem with these. Look at the games every weekend.
That's
Kids
true.
ain't getting the money, so they got plenty of money.
That's true. That's true. Well, I do know we got a minute left, so
Yeah.
that's going to do it for this edition of the MLB Inside the Diamond podcast. LaMarr, I thank you for your time as always, and we'll see you guys next week on the next one for sure.